The morning they pulled that folder from the river, the crowd gasped, but I stood still. My daughter-in-law's lies finally floated to the surface, wrapped in the papers she forged to steal my home. I didn't shout. I simply watched her face collapse under truth's weight. And this was only the beginning. When I turned into the drive, the gravel made that old crackling sound beneath Rayner's truck tires, but the house didn't answer back the way it used to. The porch looked freshly painted, yet it felt cold, like someone else's smile. The swing where I'd once rocked through summer nights was gone. Just 2 rusted hooks dangled from the beam, remembering what had been there longer than anyone inside. Rayner stepped out before I could reach the steps. "Afternoon, Mama," he said, his eyes sliding away like the words were borrowed. He looked good, clean shirt, pressed jeans, but his voice carried the kind of politeness people use with strangers. I clutched the handle of my suitcase tighter. The arthritis flared in my knuckles, and that small pain reminded me I was still real. Inside, the air smelled different. No trace of lemon oil, no hint of the old hymns my husband used to hum while dusting his trophies. Just citrus spray and something sharp, like bleach trying too hard to erase memory. The hall mirror used to show his Sunday hat perched beside it. Now a rattan frame caught my reflection in its hollow eye. Sable appeared, glossy as ever, her smile built for photos. "Oh, you made it. I thought you'd get lost with the old GPS." Her tone dripped syrup, but the edges were steel. "I still remember my own address," I said, walking past her into the living room. She followed close, perfume floating like a flag planted in every room. The first blow landed quietly. My husband's portrait, gone. In its place hung a high-resolution print of Sable and Rayner, standing in matching linen, holding champagne by the river. The light spot where the original had hung was still on the wall, bright as a scar. Sable clasped her hands. We wanted to make it lighter, more open, younger energy. I smiled just enough. Memory doesn't weigh that much. Dear, only guilt does. Her jaw tightened, but she laughed. That influencer's laugh she practiced for her followers. Rayner rubbed his wedding band like it might grant him courage. I didn't push. I just laid my hand on the mantel where the old frame once stood. Touch can claim more ground than argument. We moved into the kitchen, where she poured herbal tea instead of my usual chicory. "It's anti-inflammatory," she chirped. "Good for your joints." I stirred it slowly. "Baby, my joints aren't the ones inflamed." She blinked, unsure whether to laugh. Rayner busied himself stacking mail. One folder caught my eye. House. Active. I didn't open it, just memorized the color-coded tabs. Blue for utilities, yellow for accounts, red for deed. Junia, their little girl, sat at the island, coloring. She handed me a picture of a house beside a river, 2 stick women holding hands. "That's you and me, Grandma." I kissed her forehead. "That's the prettiest thing in this whole house." Later, neighbors dropped by for wine. Sable spoke for me as if I weren't sitting there. "She's adjusting. Change is tough at that age." I smiled at the women's nervous giggles. Change is easy. Losing your place on your own porch, that's the hard part. The laughter faltered. Sable lifted her phone, filming a quick scan of the room. Just a before shot for the house refresh reveal. I set my ring on the table to dry after washing my hands. Her eyes flicked toward it, then back to her phone. I slipped it on again, slow and sure. Message delivered. That night. I wandered down the hall, my feet soft against the wood. The rattan mirror watched me pass. From behind the office door came Sable's voice. "We'll show her the papers tomorrow. Keep it sweet," Rayner murmured. If it keeps the peace. Peace, I thought. His kind of peace, I whispered to myself. Count. Eudora, then cut. My phone sat charging on the nightstand. Tomorrow it would scan every document they slid across the counter. The porch might have forgotten my name, but the paper trail wouldn't. I woke before sunrise, the house still and pretending to sleep. The coffee maker hissed like it remembered me, though nothing else did. I took my mug black, bitter as the thoughts I wouldn't say out loud. My phone sat open on scan mode, quiet witness to the morning. One by one, I lifted each folder tab, utilities, deed, accounts, and took pictures. A spiral notebook waited beside me, its first page labeled Cullen's Estate, April 3rd, 2023. In America, if it's not written, it's not real. Junia wandered in, rubbing her eyes, dragging her blanket. "Grandma, why do grown-ups whisper all the time?" she asked. I smiled and brushed her hair back. "Because the truth makes noise, baby. Some folks don't like loud truths." She nodded like she understood, and I envied her peace. Before I left the kitchen, I checked my purse, driver's license, Medicare card, debit card, all still mine. I snapped photos front and back, insurance for my sanity. By mid-morning, Sable floated in. Bright dress, soft perfume, that plastic sunshine voice. She slid a pastel folder across the island like it was a gift. "Just housekeeping, Mama Eudora," she said, "makes life easier for everyone." The words sounded gentle, but the script was practiced. Standard form, authorized user, consolidated billing. I read aloud, slow and clear, making Rainer hear every phrase. Beneficiary designation, durable power of attorney, transfer on death. My husband taught me long ago. Read what they call fine print before it calls you foolish. "Who drafted this?" I asked. "Our family attorney, totally routine." "His name?" "I'll email it," she said, smiling the way a cat smiles at a mouse's last hope. I didn't sign. I wrote in neat block letters, "Received for review." In this country, that one sentence could stop a fall. Rainer found me on the back steps after. "Ma, can we not make everything a fight?" he asked, shoulders slumped. "I'm not fighting," I said. "I'm reading. Reading keeps folks out of court." He sighed. "Sable's trying to help. You know she means well." "Son, you ever notice how help only goes one direction in this house?" I kept my voice light. "Who paid for this roof after the hurricane?" His mouth tightened. "I'm stuck in the middle." "Only if you're sitting on the fence you built." I kissed his cheek anyway. Mothers around here love sons who wear them out. Sable's iPad blinked through the afternoon, utilities on autopay, bank routes hidden under convenience. My name had slipped from primary to secondary, like an afterthought. "We've simplified everything," she said proudly. "No paper clutter." "Paper clutter kept generations out of trouble," I told her, taking photos of every screen. She laughed softly. "Who even keeps paper bills anymore?" "Women who survive," I said. On her digital calendar, I spotted a note, 2 p.m., Sable's birthday prep. My name wasn't anywhere on it. By evening, neighbors poured in with casseroles and questions I'd answered my whole life. "You holding up okay, Miss Eudora? You look good for your age." Bless their polite little hearts. Sable rehearsed her toast under her breath. "To family who chooses each other every day." I set the forks, counting the seats. Mine was at the end of the table, closest to the swinging door. The photographer arrived just as she wanted him to. Golden hour. "This house finally reflects who we are now," Sable declared, champagne flute high. The flash caught her, then Rainer, then everyone but me. I was half shadow, half memory. She thanked friends, contractors, even the dog walker, but not the widow who paid for the marble under her shoes. I raised my glass of water to choosing gratitude over amnesia. A few folks murmured, "Amen," and someone laughed nervously. The photographer looked uncertain where to point his lens. My place card read, Eudora, guest. I sat down because sometimes you stay seated to keep your crown. A woman across the table said, "You must feel so blessed to be taken care of." I smiled, blessed to still pay for the roof. Sugar. When the server skipped my plate, I stood, crossed the room, and served myself. The silence that followed was thick as humidity. I complimented the florist, the baker, the playlist, each word measured like a ruler. Dignity doesn't require volume, it requires control. Later, as guests drifted out, I found Rainer by the coat closet. "If love's this loud for her," I said softly, "why is it so quiet for me?" "It's complicated," he whispered. "Rent is complicated. Respect is simple." I told him I wouldn't sign anything and wouldn't be erased by a birthday party. He nodded, eyes glassy. "Just don't start something tonight." "I already did," I said. "I started writing." When the house fell quiet, I laid out my evidence on the bed, the photo of my guest card, screenshots of every account, that mysterious grocery receipt with a code. I wrote one line that might someday sit in a courtroom. I did not consent. Outside, the river murmured against the bank like it was taking notes of its own. The text waited on my phone like a dare. "Tomorrow, by the river, clear the air." I stared at it through the morning light, the kind that makes everything look honest even when it isn't. I decided to go, on my own terms. I packed my spiral notebook into my jacket lining, zipped my phone in the pocket, laced my walking shoes. Before leaving, I wrote a sticky note for Junia. Church later, just something simple so she wouldn't ask questions. Rainer met me on the porch steps, hands in his pockets, eyes glassy. "Ma, don't make things complicated," he said. I told him. "Reading papers ain't complicated. Being erased is..." He didn't meet my eyes. "Sable just wants peace," he muttered. "Whose peace?" I asked. He didn't answer. The air smelled like the river had rinsed the night clean. Sable waited near the gate in her bright sundress, every hair in place, voice sweet as lemonade. "Let's just reset, okay?" she said, walking ahead. The gravel crunched under her heels in perfect rhythm. Cicadas buzzed from the trees. The air held the scent of damp metal and honeysuckle. I followed, counting turns and shadows instead of her words. She talked about brand partnerships and family image, glancing back to check my reaction. "Uh-huh," I said. "We'll see." My tone was the kind older women use when they know more than they let on. Rainer trailed behind, thumbs twitching over his phone. He kept his distance, like this wasn't his business. The path narrowed as we reached the leaning cypress, where the bank dipped low and slick. I stopped to catch my breath, studying the scuffed dirt underfoot. Too smooth, like someone had swept away the truth. Sable slowed her pace, turning toward me with a small, practiced sigh. "I know change is hard," she began. "And I probably said things wrong last night." Her eyes locked on mine, unblinking. I asked, "Who wrote those forms you had me look at?" She smiled too quickly. "Our attorney. You don't have to worry yourself." "Sweetheart," she added, her voice syrupy, "you should just enjoy your time." The word hit wrong. Sweetheart is what folks call you when they want you small. "I'll read it again," I said. This time in front of a notary. A twitch pulled at her cheek before she masked it. "Rainer's stressed," she said sharply. He needs less friction. Then maybe stop dragging sandpaper across me, I replied. I took a step toward the tree roots for steadiness. The ground gave a little under my heel. Raynor joined us, voice shaking. Ma, can you please stop making everything a fight? Baby, I said quietly, a boundary isn't a fight. It's how family stays family. He rubbed the back of his neck, not seeing how Sable's eyes darted to his phone. That glance was too quick, too planned. I turned toward the water. I didn't sign, and I won't. The breeze went still. Cicadas stopped mid-song. Then Sable's tone changed, flat, final. Some things only get solved one way. Her hand touched my shoulder, firm, familiar. Then the ground vanished. My body went light, the world spinning between sky and river. I saw Raynor's face, white and useless, and then the water took me. Cold carved through my chest, my breath split in half. The river didn't roar, it screamed. I hit hard, the current wrapping around me like a rough sheet. My jacket ballooned, pulling me under. I kicked, twisted, remembered the route near the bend. My mind turned practical. Don't panic, find texture, root, rock, weed. My husband's cross was gone, but his voice wasn't. Breathe between the waves, Eudora. I reached out, fingers scraping bark. Pain blooming bright. Pain meant living. I kicked sideways with the current, not against it. Swimmer's math from childhood summers. Above me, nothing, no shouts, no help, just two shadows still on the bank. When my head finally broke the surface, the world blurred into sun and mud. I coughed the river out, elbows digging into the bank. My lungs burned like they'd been baptized by fire. I turned toward the sound of footsteps, but all I saw were two sets of prints leading away, clean, deliberate, leaving no pause between guilt and departure. When I opened my eyes, the world smelled like candle wax and antiseptic. I was under the roof of St. Agnes, wrapped in a scratchy blue blanket that felt like salvation. A nun pressed a mug of peppermint tea into my hands. "You're safe here, Mrs. Cullens," she said softly. I didn't tell her that safety's just a word until it's written down. I refused the hospital. Too many bills, too many questions, and settled for gauze, antiseptic, and a borrowed sweater that smelled faintly of cedar. I opened my spiral notebook, wrote the date, time, and the words, pushed from riverbank. I listed what the water stole were my cross, my shoes, my jacket, and ended with a prayer. Lord, keep my head clear and my pen working. Later, one of the parish volunteers brought her phone to show me what the world now believed. Sable's face filled the screen, mascara streaked, voice trembling. Please help us find Eudora. She wandered off after the party. We're heartbroken. The live stream comments bloomed with hearts and prayers. Behind her stood Raynor, silent, eyes glazed. My name scrolled beneath the video like a lost dog notice. Sable even tagged her sponsor. I memorized every word, every timestamp, every lie. Keep crying, baby, I whispered. The river watched. At dusk, the rectory secretary called a notary from her book club. We turned my notes into a sworn affidavit, each page stamped and initialed like a small resurrection. My hands trembled, but my signature didn't. We made 3 copies, one sealed for the police, one for the parish file, one for me. The nun helped photograph my bruises under good light, a ruler and frame for scale. Each mark on my skin was another receipt. We faxed everything to the non-emergency desk and the county tip line. I wrote a short cover note. I am safe. I was pushed. I request a detective. Sister Ann loaned me a prepaid flip phone and $40 from the parish petty cash. I signed an IOU. Dignity always signs its name. A retired deacon drove me to a pharmacy for antiseptic spray, crackers, and a plain ball cap. I kept my head low, blending in with the evening crowd. Back at St. Agnes, I labeled an envelope to Detective Vaughn Reeve. I circled tomorrow on the wall calendar with a red heart. That's when my voice would leave this room. Through the chapel window, I saw the glow of candles flickering across the lawn. Sable had organized a vigil, slow guitar, tearful speeches, even drones circling overhead. She spoke softly into the microphone. Eudora's been confused lately. She must have wandered. Her verb slipped into past tense. A neighbor mentioned muddy footprints near the river, and Sable cut him off with a hug and a new prayer. I watched from the church hallway, pen in hand, writing down her every phrase. We did everything we could. Past perfect, present lie. By 10, the candles were out, and the crowd thinned. I called the police tip line myself, gave the facts that mattered. Time, place, names, a notarized statement on file. The operator said Detective Reeve would call in the morning. I left the sealed envelope on the office desk with Sister Anne's initials beside it. Near midnight, a parish teen sent me a clip, search boats unloading at the county ramp, men shouting, ropes shining under floodlights. I lay back on the cot, the blanket rough against my skin, and whispered to the dark ceiling, "Tomorrow." Then, the river might still hold its secrets, but I had mine on paper now, and paper doesn't drown. At dawn, fog hung low over the Natchez River like the Lord's breath, waiting for a confession. I stood behind St. Agnes's gate wrapped in the parish sweater, watching county trucks roll up and park along the bank. Orange vests shimmered through the mist, while news crews adjusted tripods and whispered headlines. Elderly widow presumed drowned. Family devastated. Detective Vaughn Reeve arrived last, coffee in hand, eyes sharp but steady, the kind that read people before papers. The nun beside me whispered, "God's timing, not yours." And I nodded. The first dragnet rose, dripping weeds and silt. Folks craned their necks. Then came a flash of plastic, clear, sealed, and familiar. It wasn't my body that surfaced. It was Sable's pastel folder. Reeve crouched by the evidence tech, gloved hands opening the sleeve. I recognized every line, every curl of her fake kindness. Those were the housekeeping forms she'd slid across my kitchen island, the ones I'd refused to sign. Inside were notarized drafts with my forged signature, dated the morning after my so-called disappearance. 3 witness initials from her party ring glared like cheap pearls. Reeve's expression shifted from pity to process. "Photograph, tag, chain of custody," he ordered. The air thickened with truth. I texted him from the parish phone. "Check the notary's commission. I filed the real affidavit." His reply came fast. "Received." For the first time in 24 hours, I felt the river wasn't holding its tongue anymore. By mid-morning, the Cullens estate turned into a stage. Sable met officers at the gate, her voice trembling just right. "Oh, Lord, did you find her?" she cried. Cameras loved her grief until Reeve held up the plastic sleeve. Her eyes flickered, one heartbeat too slow. "That's from weeks ago," she blurted, but the date stamp gleamed fresh. Reporters zoomed in. Even the microphones smelled the lie. Rayner rushed forward, shouting, "She's confused." Reeve lifted a hand. "You can stay silent or stay honest." That's when I stepped out from the crowd. Gasps spread like wind through pine. Sable froze, her lipstick cracked. I walked closer, calm as church bells. "You prayed for my body before checking for a pulse," I said. Reeve asked, "Did she push you runnies, ma'am?" I met his eyes. "She tried to delete me. The river saved the draft." Sable's face collapsed into excuses. It was wet, slippery. I tried to help. Reeve compared her heel print to one cast from the mud. They matched. I handed him my notarized affidavit. "This is the truth that doesn't need an audience," Rayner whispered. "Ma, please stop." I looked at him. My only child, my biggest heartbreak. "I already stopped," I said. "I stopped trusting you." At the sheriff's office that afternoon, Reeve poured tea into a styrofoam cup and placed it before me. Across the table, Sable shredded tissues while cameras flashed outside, one by one. Reeve laid the items out: folder, affidavit, photos, utility records. Each hit the metal desk with the weight of thunder. Rayner mumbled about lawyers. Sable nodded like a puppet on borrowed time. I stayed still. Southern mothers don't gloat. We record. My closing line for the statement was simple. A signature is just ink. A lie is a lifetime. Evening News broke the story. Elderly woman found alive after attempted homicide. Comment sections buzzed with shame and awe. Back at St. Agnes, Sister Anne met me with peppermint tea and said, "Told you, God keeps receipts." I placed my spiral notebook in the parish safe and began a new one labeled Aftermath. Outside, the river turned gold under the setting sun. I whispered, "We're not done yet." Old girl. My borrowed phone buzzed. Rayner's text blinked. She made me do it. "Please don't destroy us," I typed back. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm archiving it." The rope sliced through the morning fog like handwriting on water. I stood beside Detective Reeve, notebook zipped inside my sweater. Pages pre-numbered for whatever the river decided to confess. Deputies waded in, their boots sinking into the silt as divers slipped under the brown surface. The current looked calm, too calm. The way liars look friendly when you finally start asking questions. TV vans hummed on the bank. Neighbors folded their arms, pretending they were praying when really, they were waiting for gossip worth repeating. Reeve asked me to mark the minutes each buoy surfaced. I wrote every time stamp in my careful block letters, initials aligned to his. A diver surfaced and clenched his fist, the signal for heavy. The rope pulled tight, straining against the truth it was about to drag into daylight. My husband used to say when something broke loose in the garage, "Come on, tell on yourself." I whispered that now to the river. The first barrel came up slow, scraping against rock. Rust flaked like dried blood. Reporters gagged, then leaned closer. Sable's face was somewhere behind the caution tape, powdered and perfect. Mascara holding steady until she saw the chain looped around the drum. Reeve called for gloves and photos. I noted the link pattern, the padlocks, the silt line marking how long it had slept down there. The lid groaned open. A sour hiss filled the air. "Human remains," a deputy said flat. Rayner's throat bobbed, eyes glassy. Sable reached for his arm, missed. For the first time, I saw her hands shake before her mouth did. I didn't look away. Women who've survived worse learn not to blink when truth surfaces. Then came the gloved hand holding artifacts, fabric, a scrap of chain, and finally a gold ring bent at one edge. The light caught the engraving. E. M. K. J. L. A. 1973. My breath locked. "That's my husband's wedding ring," I said quietly. Reeve glanced at me. I didn't cry. "He lost it 30 years ago, right here." I continued. Sable's voice cracked. "Rings wash up all the time?" She tripped over wash. Reeve nodded to Baggett with a ruler and scale. I copied the evidence number, circled it twice. "The river kept what you couldn't," I told her, not raising my voice. Before anyone could exhale, divers signaled again. Another barrel, heavier this time, pulled from deeper water. The metal shone newer, the chain bright. Reeve's jaw set. The drum tilted, spilling silt and something darker. 3 distinct sets of remains. The crowd gasped. Even the birds went silent. Reeve shifted from observer to builder, cross-referencing missing persons, last seen dates, possible connections. A deputy muttered names I half recognized: an old farmhand, a traveling salesman, a woman nobody reported missing because nobody missed her. This wasn't an accident. This was inventory. I wrote the line without shaking. This is not a slip. This is a pattern. Sable tried to pivot, her voice pitched for cameras. We've all been under stress. Eudora's memory isn't... Reeve cut her off. Listing dates, witness statements, and the affidavit with my notarized signature. A neighbor spoke up, mentioning the muddy boots he saw in her truck last night. She hugged him mid-sentence, trying to plug the leak, but guilt doesn't seal that easy. Rayner looked at me, pleading. Ma, please, don't do this. I met his eyes. I didn't. The river did. Sable broke for the trees, but the deputies were faster. They cuffed her clean. No shouting, no drama, just the sound of metal doing its job. Rayner sagged against the cruiser, tears raw now that the act was over. I didn't reach for him. Stand up, son, I said. Tell the truth while there's still any left. Reeve handed me a victim services card. I gave him my index of notes. You'll need all of it, I said. You'll have it, he replied. By nightfall, the scene emptied into sirens and rustling evidence bags. I leaned on the hood of my car, opened a fresh notebook, and wrote one word across the top: aftermath. The river had finally spoken, and all I had to do was keep listening. Morning came soft and gray, like a page waiting for ink. I rode with Detective Reeve to the sheriff's office, my spiral notebook pressed against my chest. We logged it as supplemental evidence, signing each page with the precision of 2 people who understood the weight of paper. Victim Services laid out the process: protective order, no contact terms, court appearances. I initialed every box like I was paying another bill: steady, practical, unsentimental. A technician rephotographed my bruises under clinical light. I asked for duplicate prints. Personal file, I said. Reeve double-checked the barrel evidence numbers. I recited them like Sunday hymns. Then I gave my statement: what was stolen, what was meant, what the river gave back. Afterward, I made a mental list: coffee, aspirin, a prepaid phone plan, and one note to myself: stay factual, not vengeful. The courthouse smelled of toner and nerves. Reporters filled the hall, neighbors pretending they came for errands. A clerk whispered, "Ms. Cullens, you can take the front row." I chose the aisle. Better sightlines. Sable entered in cuffs. Chin lifted, lawyer tight at her elbow. She looked everywhere except at me. Rayner followed, hands cuffed in front. Smaller than I remembered. Stripped of his phone and his confidence. The judge read charges linked to the barrels: unlawful disposal, homicide, fraud. Murmurs rolled through the crowd like thunder under the floorboards. I sat still. Southern grandmothers have mastered that art: stillness that shames storms. During recess, Rayner asked a deputy to use the desk phone to call a pastor. The blinking red light betrayed him. Sable, delete the drafts in the garage, behind the paint cans. Use Dad's old keys. He hissed into the receiver. Reeve's eyes narrowed. The recorder clicked. Chain of custody logged. I didn't flinch. I simply wrote 5 words. He knew where to look. Deputies dispersed toward my property with a warrant team. The judge recessed into chambers, new evidence shifting the day's rhythm. I sat quietly, palms folded, whispering a line my husband used to say: "Truth travels slower than rumor, but it always finds parking." When court resumed, the prosecutor spoke names instead of case numbers: a farmhand missing since '94, A traveling salesman last seen near Natchez Landing, a woman whose absence nobody filed. Each matched the remains from the barrels, every link traced back to Sable's online purchases, padlocks, barrels, cleaning agents. Receipts tied Rayner to fuel records near the river ramp. Even the clerk at the hardware store remembered his nervous laugh. The judge added charges. Defense protested. The gavel's echo made every head bow. Families wept quietly behind me. I whispered each victim's name under my breath, giving them the small dignity Sable denied. Back at St. Agnes, the parish hall smelled of coffee and lemon cleaner. Folding chairs circled like a support group for the living. Sister Anne led with logistics, meals, transportation, updates for the victims' families. Reeve joined long enough to remind everyone no confrontations, no online posts, no premature justice. A legal aid volunteer explained compensation procedures and financial freezes. I took notes like a secretary of resilience. My assignment: thank you letters to nurses, clerks, and one neighbor brave enough to speak up. We agreed to meet again at dusk for updates from the estate search. The nun pressed a rosary into my hand. I didn't pray it, just counted the beads as minutes. By afternoon, the warrant team was deep in my late husband's workshop. Paint cans, pegboard, a hidden lockbox under the bench. Inside, laminated cleaning checklists in Sable's pastel font. Thumb drives labeled housekeeping, a ledger coded with initials instead of names. Reeve's voice turned grave. We've got enough to expand charges, gas receipts, ramp gate copies, all in Rayner's handwriting. He turned to me, gentle but firm. You don't need to see more, I answered. Detective, I already did. On the porch, I watched cardinals bicker over sunflower seeds and practiced the phrase I'd been saving. I choose locks. At the courthouse annex, I signed a protective order. The clerk highlighted the 500-foot boundary in yellow. My attorney filed to freeze assets and secure the estate. I rewrote my will that afternoon. If family meant harm, then inheritance went to the church and the victim's kin. I disabled Rayner's access to every account and app. Each click felt like drawing a clean breath. I texted Junia, safe, locks change at dawn. In my notebook, I drew a thick line and titled it, End of Old Business. Dusk painted the sky lavender. A deputy taped notices along my gate while I sat on the porch, sipping tea gone cold. Rayner's transport car idled beyond the property line. He stepped out, unsteady, eyes hollow. Ma, he called softly. What do I do now? I looked straight at him, voice even. Start with the truth, baby. Then keep going. He nodded, tears catching the dying light. The cruiser rolled away, and I stayed still, listening to crickets reclaim the silence. The first honest night in years had finally arrived. Sunlight crept through the magnolia branches as the locksmith pulled up. I met him with 2 mugs of coffee and my evidence notebook tucked under my arm. We're changing everything that opens, I told him. He nodded, already unspooling his tools. New deadbolts gleamed brass and clean, grade 1, coded only to me and the parish. The garage padlock clicked shut for the last time. I photographed it, signed the receipt, and handed the old keys to Detective Reeve's courier for evidence storage. Junia arrived with the choir list and a small cross for the hallway. Blessings at noon, she said, after you finish taking back your house. I walked room to room, naming what stayed, my husband's photo, the piano, the porch swing, and what left with the past. A key is just a decision with teeth, I thought, and today I had plenty. The courthouse buzzed with the hush that comes before a storm. Sable's plea echoed through the chamber, multiple counts tied to the river deaths. Rayner faced obstruction, accessory, and falsified statements. When the judge asked for victim statements, I stood. Mine was brief, clear, and signed twice for truth's sake. The defense spun grief, confusion, stress, but I stayed steady. Restitution, I said, not revenge. Funds to be directed to the River Families Trust, education, therapy, legal aid for victims of silence. My attorney rose next, filing the probate action that sealed everything, revoked powers of attorney, frozen accounts, estate secured under my sole signature. The courtroom rustled as the clerk stamped it, final, binding, public. Sable's lawyer whispered fast, but the gavel struck louder. The sheriff's order followed, vacate within 72 hours. I didn't look back. The sound of justice didn't need applause. By afternoon, the riverbank filled with people who once whispered. St. Agnes's choir hummed, "Shall we gather at the river?" Voices soft as mist. Candles lined the mud path. I read each recovered name aloud, one by one, letting silence sit between them like breath. Louise, the gold ring, my husband's, rested inside a glass box near the memorial plaque. I spoke of the River Families Trust, how seized funds would educate children and rebuild homes. A widow beside me squeezed my hand. "You gave them back their names," she said. Reeves stood off to the side, hat against his chest, no words needed. I scattered wildflower seeds along the water's edge. "Let beauty mark the place where secrets tried to live," I said, and the crowd repeated it softly like a prayer they chose to keep. 3 days later, deputies supervised the estate clearance. Body cams rolled as boxes left the front door one by one. No antiques, no ledgers, no drives, just clothes and the kind of regret that doesn't pack well. Rayner signed for a single box, photos of his children, an old guitar. "Thank you, son," I said quietly, "for leaving right this time." Utilities flipped in real time, locks recoded, insurance confirmed. My property manager texted, "All secured." I renamed the Wi-Fi Aftermath Keeps Receipts and smiled for the first time in months. Closure wasn't noise, it was notarized. At St. Agnes that evening, I read a short statement before local news cameras. I thanked every diver, clerk, and neighbor who'd chosen truth over comfort. When asked about forgiveness, I said, "Forgiveness is a private door. Today is about locks everyone can see." I refused to speak Sable's name, only the victims. I ended with this: write dates, keep copies. Quiet doesn't mean weak. The choir finished with amazing grace, and even the microphones lowered, humbled. By dusk, the house smelled of lemon oil and new paint. The keys were warm in my palm. I set one on the mantel beside my husband's framed ring photo. Junia and I shared cornbread and silence. 2 women who'd earned their peace. I opened a fresh spiral and wrote legacy on the first line. Beneath it, truth, music, river, boundaries. I capped the pen, sealing it like a promise. When I finally lay down, I slept without dreams of water. At 10, the sound of paper sliding under the front door stirred me. A padded envelope lay on the mat, no return address, postmarked 3 counties away. Inside, a small thumb drive with one word written across it: before. The cursor blinked as I plugged in the thumb drive. A folder appeared, time-stamped years before the river ever spoke. My heart paused between beats. Inside. One file name glowed, Rayner Confession Final MP4. I whispered, "Lord, what did you do?" Then the screen flickered. Someone else's face appeared, and it wasn't Sable's,